Welcome back, everybody. So today we will be going through changing the gears a little bit and tapping into the lower part of the body with the glute adductor balance, the hamstring quadricep balance, psoas and iliopsoas, and the pelvic floor. And by these, I'm not really trying to get you all know the names of the muscles and the intricacies of all, but my main goal is actually to get you to know at least the shapes and the positions and the placements of the muscles, so you can start to feel these, because in order for you to feel something, it really helps a lot to know the shape and the position of the muscle. And then when you visualize it, it just makes it way more easier so you can relax it. And we already talked about how was being compassionate. Just wish somebody from your heart that they are happy, that they are healthy, that they are at peace, that they are at ease, and also that they shall be loved. And this person can also be your own beautiful self. But as we are getting started, let's start with a practice. And if it is possible for you, just stand up and come to a standing position. And I'll spotlight my video here. And all you need to do is, this is relatively a little bit of Tai Chi inspired practice, just becoming aware of the different parts of your body. And what I want you to do is to bring your knees to a soft bend, keep your spine nice and straight, and then slightly turn your toes in. And start to bring your awareness to the lower part of your body. Allow your legs to feel a little bit heavy. And start to feel a little bit more soft, like you are standing in the ocean. Start to notice the back and forth motion of the body. There is always a sway. And now let's play with this sway. Just bring your body in any possible way that you like. It can be from side to side. You can just move a little bit, moving to the right side, moving to the left side. Again, keep your knees soft. Relax your knees. Relax your hips. Now you can dangle back and forth, going to the toes, going to the hips, going to the heels. Or you can do circles. Notice the relationship between your hips and the knees and the feet. And as you are just moving along, start to feel a little bit heavier from the hips, and relax your hips. Relax your knees. Like you're a sand clock, allow all the way to go to the soles of your feet. Just having a little bit of a sway, having a little bit of going to the right and left or back and forth. Now start to become a little bit more aware of your breath and try to breathe towards your navel area, which is basically a few inches or 2 inches below your belly button. And it is not necessarily an anatomical point within the body, but it is where the center of gravity within the body is. So allow your body to become a little bit more bottom heavy rather than top heavy. Just becoming aware. Notice how the body weight shifts and how the muscles engage and disengage. And as you go to the one side, lift that hip up, just lifting the hip and bringing all the body weight to one leg. And also go to the other side, come onto the toes on the one leg and lift the hip up, just moving with the pelvis, moving the shape, and start to become aware of the shape of the bones of the pelvis, the tailbone, the pubic bone, becoming aware of the length of your quadriceps and the hamstrings and the inner thighs. Notice the connection between the femur or the thigh bones and the lower leg bones. And notice when you shift your body weight right and left, how the kneecaps react to this motion, how they support you. Keep the knees soft. Spread the body weight all around the feet. And as you exhale slowly, thank you so much, find back to your seated position. Just becoming aware of how the body moves and how the legs move. So as we are getting started, let's look at the main, these are not the main muscles of the lower body, but these are the main muscles of the lower body that I am going to mention heavily today. So the first ones are the quadriceps. We don't have to know the Latin names for it, but these are the quadriceps. And where is the fourth quadricep? It's below the one at the middle. And the hamstrings right here, we got the 3 hamstrings, and we have the adductors. All of these adductors, basically not the names, but the shapes and the positions and the functions of them that you have to know. And this is the muscle. And the reason that we are going to mention it, I will also say it later on. Just start to become aware of the shapes and the locations of these muscles. And then we will be coming back to this slide just to understand where they are and how they work. So we have the gluteus maximus here. And then notice this is the sit bone. And how the gluteus max is actually, when it's fully extended and contracted, it is covering the sit bone. So when you are sitting, and if your hips are working, there has to be the gluteus max between the floor or the chair and the sit bone. So most people, when they sit, they just sit on their bones and they can feel the bone on the surface. But when this muscle is contracted, you can actually see that it's covering under the sit bone. And we have the gluteus medius, which is a very good balancing. When you are balancing on one leg, you use this muscle. And you have the gluteus medius, which is right here, right under the medius, almost doing the same function. And we have piriformis here, which is also a very little muscle, but a very painful muscle for some. The reason for that is the sciatic nerve, starting from the lower back, is either going around this muscle and going down to the leg, or in some cases, it's going through this muscle. So imagine this nerve going through the muscle and going all the way down to the leg. So when people have this muscle very tight or very short, then it causes also a lot of pain and a lot of other discomfort for the body. And this pain can be manifest at the knees, at the toes. The fact that you are pinching the nerve right at the piriformis doesn't necessarily mean that you will also have the pain right there. It can be manifest, or it can be felt somewhere else along the bone or along the nerve. And last but definitely not the least, we have the psoas. So this is the psoas muscle, which is in the front of the body and in the deepest layer, right behind or right underneath your abdominal wall. And it starts from the front of the body on the lower back, and it connects to your inner thigh and the pelvic bone. But it also has this side of the psoas, which is called iliopsoas. So from the crust of your hip on the inside, it originates and it goes all the way down to the thigh bone. At the end of the session, we will do a practice to relax and understand what all these muscles are actually doing. But before we start all of those, I actually would like to, I found a beautiful 3D animation on the internet, on YouTube, as to how the pelvic floor muscles work and how they look. And the pelvic floor will be basically our main topic of today, because it is like the gate for all of these, and it is going to help you understand a lot of stuff with your body. So let's see, where is this?
The pelvic floor is the base of the group of muscles referred to as your core. Is the base of the group of muscles referred to as in your pelvis.
Is the audio okay?
It was like double.
Oh, okay.
Maybe somebody was unmuted.
Okay, how about now?
And stretch like a hammock from the pubic bone at the front to the tailbone at the back, and from side to side. They support the bladder, bowel and uterus, and play an important role in bladder and bowel control and sexual function. If your pelvic floor muscles don't work well, you may leak when you do things like coughing, sneezing, lifting, laughing, or exercising. To stop this from happening, you need to switch on your pelvic floor muscles. To switch on the pelvic floor muscles, you need to squeeze and draw in the muscles around your vagina, as if you are trying to stop the flow of urine. Lift them up inside. Breathe normally. Don't hold your breath or tighten your buttocks. Then let go and relax the pelvic floor muscles completely. Notice as you tighten and lift your pelvic floor muscles, they tighten and close around the anal passage, vagina, and urethra. By exercising the pelvic floor regularly, you will train your muscles to work automatically when they are needed.
I think that was a great presentation of it, because seeing it visually in an understandable way will make it way more accessible to you. And there is also the male version that I would like to share. It's almost the same thing, but like, and you also see how like a trampoline, it's also functions like your diaphragm. And then in the last week of the physical alignment series, we will make a lot of connections between the pelvic floor and the diaphragm.
The pelvic floor is the base of the group of muscles referred to as your core. These muscles are located in your pelvis and stretch like a hammock from the pubic bone at the front to the tailbone at the back and from side to side. They support the bladder and bowel and play an important role in bladder and bowel control and sexual function. If your pelvic floor muscles don't work well, you may leak when you do things like coughing, sneezing, lifting, laughing, or exercising. To stop this from happening, you need to switch on your pelvic floor muscles. To switch on the pelvic floor muscles, you need to squeeze and draw in the muscles around the base of the penis, as if you are trying to stop the flow of urine. You should see your penis draw in and your scrotum lift up. Breathe normally. Don't hold your breath or tighten your buttocks. Then let go and relax the pelvic floor muscles completely. Notice as the pelvic floor muscle tightens, the anal passage closes. The same action happens to the urethra. By exercising the pelvic floor regularly, you will train your muscles to work automatically when they are needed.
Thank you very much, Continuous Foundation of Australia, for these beautiful 3D animations. And we are going to use all of this information and we will integrate this all. But first and foremost, how to stand. Like, okay, doing this yoga poses, how to do the warrior two, how to do whatever, but how do you stand? And most people that I have to talk here about the virtual body image, that whenever they stand, they think that they are standing upright. But the matter of the fact is, how you are standing is how you are used to stand. It might not always be the case. So here in the first figure, our guy is in a mode that is on the go mode, basically. All of his body weight is down onto his toes, and his hips and the upper body is leaning forward. This is kind of like in the go mode. And I will mention in the next slide what I mean by the go mode. And the second guy here is kind of pushing back, and look at how the knees are hyperextended. His knees are hyperextended. He's leaning so much on his psoas, and the front of the belly is slacking, and there is also the extra arch on his lower back. So the body weight is relatively in the middle of his feet, but then he is compensating it with this S shape. Like, do you see the snaking shape? But like the second is, I think this is the same guy, but the same guy lifts his chin up, so which also makes the abdominals engage and the front of the body lift up. Then the body weight kind of shifts back and recorrects itself a little bit. So we will talk a lot about on the 8th week where to place the head and how to keep the head on top of the shoulders. But now I am a little bit more focusing on the knees and the hips. So this is kind of like a more of a correct posture. And we have a great drawing here. So this guy in the first one, he is the normal standing. And basically by the normal stand, it doesn't mean that your spine is totally straight. There is always an S shape to your spine, but there's a little bit of a curve and then a little bit of a kyphosis here and lordosis here, which is like the hunching and the arching, which is to evenly distribute the body weight so there's not too much strain on your spine, which is perfectly normal. But you basically keep the hips on top of the heels and then keep your pelvic floor parallel to the floor. So your pelvic floor, again, is the muscles between the sit bones in front of the tailbone and behind the pubic bone. So that has to be level to the floor when you are seated or standing. But when we look at the second guy, which they say the back gripper, but I say the green light effect. So what it happens is, this is like you are pushing the chest forward and arching the lower back. And this also makes your knees hyperextend. You push your knees too far back. Bless you. You push your knees too far back, and you also do not use your lower abdominal muscles. And this will also tie into the fact that your psoas, which goes from the front of the spine to the inner thighs, is very tight, so it's pulling on your lower back all the way down. But when it comes to the other guy, this is hyperextension and this is the underextension. Well, so what happens here is he's using his hips way too much and pushing the tailbone too far forward. That's collapsing the front of the spine and also bending the knees. So this is a good example for tight hamstrings and overactive quadriceps and gripping with the glutes. And the last guy is probably like it's called a military stand at some other places. So it's like too tight arching back and too tight with the hips, and it is taking the natural curve of the spine and putting your body in a very rigid and upright position. And what is the green light effect or the red light effect is this. So green light effect is the position of your body where you push your chest forward like a gorilla and in a go, go, go mode. And the red light effect is kind of like slouching, and then when you are upset with something or when you are tired or when you are trying to hide, that makes you not want to go. That makes you want to stay in the same place or go backwards. That's what they mean. But like when it comes to the front of the body, then most people also do not stand on two legs. They always favor one leg over the other. And then this creates a third effect, so green light, red light effect, and the third effect is a trauma effect, which you either go forward or backwards, but you also put a twist to it. So notice the level of this lady's hips. One hip is higher than the other because this leg is pushed all the way back, possibly hyperextending, and this leg is not carrying enough body weight. And in the same case with this person, his hip and heel are not aligned. So if you draw a line between his heel all the way, it comes to the middle of his thighs, and then his body weight is all the way shifted. And this is relatively normal that people do this because the right side of your body and the left side of your body are not necessarily the same weight, because one side has the heart, the other side has the liver, and depending on your health issues, your liver might be way heavier than your heart. Or if you are a person who always kicks with the right leg, the muscles of your right leg might be way bigger than the muscles of the left leg. So as well as here, there is a back and forth, so tight, like you are using the front and the back and the front and the back. There's a zigzagging pattern from the side. There is also a zigzagging pattern from the front. So you will see a lot of people, yeah, like I hurt my left knee and then my right ankle gave up after a few years. So So if you are doing something here, it's going to bounce back here and that's going to bounce back there. The body has a way of making sure that you still survive, but then you have to compensate. So rather than compensating, what we are trying to do is trying to even out the body weight distribution as much as possible. And this is between the right side and the left side, between the hips and the quadriceps, and also between the toe edge and the heel edge. This is, I'm not going to too deep into how to stand and how to sit, and I'll just give you some ideas and then proceed. But the next one is how to sit. The goal, again, is not to sit in one position at all times, but the goal is to make sure that however you are sitting, that it is in a way that is actually serving you. If you're always seated like this, which was, which was all my college years, basically you are over time, and people who sit like this or who sit like this, they will eventually start to complain about either having a numb hip or having issues with the lower back and the lower spine. Because if you are sitting like this in a longer period of time, basically you are not giving enough blood supply to the sacral area, and this also stretches the lower back and creates a very awkward position for your head, and eventually you get that hunchback right behind your neck. And the first guy, if you look at it, he is putting a lot of strain in his middle back, because so your head has a lot of weight to it. And then the second, if your head comes forward 1 inch, it puts 10 more pounds of pressure to your spine. If it comes forward 2 inches, it's going to put 20 more pounds of pressure to your spine. So every inch you move the head forward, you are actually putting way more pressure to your spine and the neck to be carried. And over time, it's going to create all that sensation. I still am not going to go too deep onto this, but a good measure for where your head should be, of course, on top of your shoulders, and the ears should be aligned with your shoulders, like this good example here. And the problem with this guy is he probably has very tight psoas, but we'll get to it in like 10 minutes. So he is arching his lower back too much. He is just overdoing it and pushing the lower ribs too far forward, which is actually not a comfortable position to be in either, because you are overusing your lower back muscles. So what to do is to, if you imagine the tailbone is almost perpendicular to the floor, but maybe slightly pointing back a little bit. And then the pubic bone is actually, you can feel your pubic bone and then push it down with the abs. So feel the lower abs and then push the pubic bone a little bit back and push the tailbone a little bit forward and push your sit bones together. Basically what I am telling you is to keep your pelvic floor parallel to the floor. And also, I mean, this is not an advertisement, but I have sit on chairs like this, and I didn't know what the name of it. I just wrote knee chair on Google, and then these images came up. And if you are a person who is sitting for a prolonged period of times, you can try something like this, because look at here. When the knees are so up high, then the hip flexation or like stretching the lower back is way more higher than this one, because the knees are lower, and then you are not stretching your back for as much as you are doing on a normal chair. And at the same time, you are distributing the body weight not only on the hips, but also hips and the knees. So there is less strain on your body when you are seated. But what about sitting on the floor? So I have this guy on the left. He looks like sad, but it is also a great understanding, because what you are doing in this position is you are extremely increasing the hip flexation, but at the same time, imagine the psoas muscle. Let's go back quickly. Psoas, this one, from your lower back to the inner thigh. So from his lower back to the inner thigh, what he is doing is he's getting so tired, and then he is leaning forward, stretching the lower back, and making the psoas muscle shorter. So if something is being pulled, and then when you make it shorter, you are basically putting it at a relaxing position, which is good for the psoas, but also not good for your spine, because you are slouching and pulling on your lower back. So by making your psoas not tight, you are making your lower back tight, and then you are also messing up with the shape of the spine. Same with these two examples too. It is great, and I'm not saying this, you can never sit like this, but just once one thing is habitual, then you will endure the consequences of it. So just bring your awareness to how you sit and how you stand. But what is the good way of sitting is propping. Put a prop under your hips. So this is the same thing like the knee chair. Do you see this angle is way less than this angle? So it's the same thing with these guys, that they put a nice little pillow under their hips. You can sit in cross-legged or the Japanese style, and this way you are basically leveling your pelvic floor parallel with the floor. And this is a way more comfortable way of sitting, and you also can get your spine more comfortable. Most people, like that first guy here, is using extreme insertion from their lower back, the QLs and the spinal erectus muscles, and then it's just straining the lower back. So rather than that, you can start to sit in this position, and we will talk way more about this when we are talking about the abs and the abdominal walls in the last week. But so you can push your pubic bone back to activate your lower abs, and also start to relax your lower back, just keeping a nice even balance on your spine. So that's how to sit. And let's look at the knees for a second. There is these are the normal knees, and of course there is going to be a little bit of a curve because the feet are not as wide as your hips, and that is supposed to be 15 degrees here. And the knock knees is when your IT bends the side of your quadriceps and the side of your hamstrings. Remember here, there is 4 quadriceps, and when this one is so tight, and also right behind it there is the IT band, and also right behind it there is the outside edge of the hamstring. So when these guys are too tight, what happens is the tibia here is being pulled to the outside, and it changes the shape of your legs actually. Let's look at here. When these side of the muscles are too tight, it puts the shin bone or the tibia more out to the right, and it also changes the way you put your feet on the floor. And we also have the bow legs. What happens with the bow legs is you have very tight hips and weak adductors. So what happens is what the hips does is if you look at your toes, and if you point your right toes or turn your right toes out to the right, or turn your left toes out to the left, that's called the external rotation. And the main muscle that does it is your hips. So when this glute gets shorter, your foot turns out. It externally rotates. And I'm gonna say this now, if your glutes are not active position, then the piriformis is doing it, but it is not today's topic that much. So what happens is that your inner thighs also, the adductors are not working efficiently. So these guys are weak. So see how right here, it also pulls the tibia in. And then the guys on the outside are kind of tight. So that means they are short and they are pulling on. And that puts your knees into a bow position, like a parenthesis. And these are the real legs rather than drawings. See how it is coming straight and with a little bit of an ankle, and the ankles are touching each other. But when it comes to the bow leg, the knees are turning out to the right. And then you see how the kneecap, so the kneecap is exactly right in the center of the thigh here. The kneecap is being pulled out in these ones, and being pulled up and out. And also in this one, it is more in the shape, but it pulls more on down at the tibia, or like the shin bone. There's one more occasion which is very common with the knees. It is the hyperextension. So the hyperextended knee is also, I heard this called horse leg or something, but I will not go too deep into it, but it kind of does look like the back leg of a horse. So what it happens is, rather than really engaging the quadricep, you push the leg back, push the knee back, and eventually what happens is you start to injure, or you start to put a lot of strain on your ACL, and eventually even the MCL and PCL, what is not very healthy for your knees after all. So what you want to do is, again, if you have hyperextended knees, and not all people, some people have underextended knees because they have very tight hamstrings and then they do not stretch the leg properly, which is fine, which is not that dangerous, because when your knees are hyperextended, or you can also have it on the elbows, then it is less stable. And rather than using the muscle, you are using the support of the kneecap here and then the pull of the ligaments here, and you are going to strain rather than standing on your ligaments. And this is the same issue here. So this person here is also standing on his ligaments. The leg is pushed back and then putting a lot of strain on your joints and the ligaments rather than using the muscles. So what we want to do is really engage the quadricep and the hamstring at the same time to keep the thigh bone exactly on top of the lower leg bones, the shin and the side of the shin. And what happens when you do not use the quadricep, which is the vastus medialis, is again this one part of the quadricep, and this muscle shuts off the second you have a knee injury. And this is not because it's mad at you, it's because it's a protection matter. Like the second, if you hurt your kneecap or if you break your knee, this muscle shuts off, so you do not move your kneecap anymore. But if you do not train this muscle, or if you have an injury and not recover it properly, then in the absence of this muscle, what happens is this muscle start to work. This is called sartorius. And then this is another compensation pattern, which is going to look like this. So this is where the vastus medialis part, or like that part of the quadricep, is supposed to lift the kneecap up. And then you can also see how her kneecap is also pulling out to the right side. This is the right leg, so it's pulling out to the right. And this muscle on the inside is taking over. So if you look down at your knees and then see something that is like a band here on the right side, let's look at these guys. No, these guys' knees are pretty good, but for this one maybe. So if you look here, this is the vastus medialis. It's a little bit active, not too active, and then there is a little bit addition from the serratus muscle. So what you want to do is to make sure that you are using all the muscles of the quadriceps, and then not using the little muscles or the small muscles to compensate or make up for the pattern. But I have been using a lot of word with one thing, which I keep saying tight muscle. But what do you do with tight muscle? Most people want to stretch a tight muscle, but imagine, so this muscle is tight, okay? This is your psoas from the side. And if this muscle is tight, and when you pull on something tight, it just gets tighter. So if you are in this position, like lying down on your back, and then you want to stretch this, you stretch your legs forward, which makes it longer, which puts more weight on it, which makes it tighter. So you do not really want to stretch a tight muscle. This tight psoas is also pushing your lower back down. But what you want to do is to make the muscle shorter. So this is how your psoas look when you are lying on your back. And this is how it looks when your knees are bent. And then this is how it looks when your knees are over your hips. So you want to make the muscle in a short position and then take the load off of it. So what we are going to do is we are actually going to put a little bit of a support right under the knees, or we can just stretch the legs against the wall in a little bit in the practice, and then see how relaxing this muscle feels. And when it comes to the pelvic floor, I want you to imagine, if you just put the top blanket, the comforter, evenly on the bed, would the bed be wrinkleless, or would the bed sheet will be nice and straight? It won't be. The thing with the body is, no matter how much you try to fix the surface muscles, like you want to use so much of your quadriceps, so much of your glutes, so much of your hamstrings. What it does is it is basically trying to fix the whole bed just with the comforter. But the actual goal of tuning back into your pelvic floor is that you actually get to fix the first layer of the bedding. So you fix the first layer and then make it nice and straight, and then you put the sheet over it, and then eventually you will look at the comforter. So it's like pulling everything from the bottom to the inside. Like if you imagine balloons inside balloons inside balloons, it's like working on the first balloon in the inner core. So we are going to understand what the pelvic floor is all about, and then how to feel it a little bit. And this is going to be a very short practice. So I'm going to stop the share here and then keep on going. Just stand up and then lean against a wall to begin with. I'll give you guys a little bit minutes. This will be 2 parts, just standing up for maybe 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and then lying down for another 3 or 4 minutes. So stand up and then stay maybe 1 foot away from the wall. Bring your arms nice and out to the sides, and then reach your arms forward and bring your palms facing up. You can gently bend your elbows. And then bring your awareness to your abdominal area. Make sure you contract your hips and then feel that pelvic floor. Make your pelvic floor parallel to the floor. And again, it is the place in between your sit bones, behind the pubic bone, and in front of the tailbone. So make your pelvic floor parallel to the floor. Softly bend your knees. Reach your arms nice and forward. And then reach your hips back, keeping the pelvic floor still nice and even, and touch your hips to the wall behind you. Allow the hips to touch. Keep your knees nice and soft, and then feel the glutes between your sit bones and the wall. So from here, notice how my legs are actually bowed. So you want to make sure that your kneecaps are facing forward. And for me, I'm going to turn my toes in a little bit. And this is for everybody too. Make the outside of your foot parallel to each other. Keep your feet turned in. So we have the hip and the knee and the foot in an alignment. And then reaching the arms as forward as possible. Slight bend at the knees. Slight bend at the elbows. Now start to bring your awareness back to the sit bones. And imagine the pelvic floor. And press your sit bones against each other. Lightly engage your adductors as well, feeling the engagement from the quadriceps and the hamstrings. Slightly press your sit bones against each other. Now tuning into your lower abs, find the pubic bone, push the pubic bone back, but at the same time, press the tailbone forward. Still finding that level of your pelvic floor and lift up from your pelvic floor, keeping that not slouching down, but like a straight trampoline, not like a trampoline with weight on it. A straight layer that is parallel to the plane of the floor. Just holding this a few more times, and then slowly contract the hips and stay away from the wall, noticing where everything is and how everything works. For the next part, you can lie on your back and then put your leg on a chair. But for me, I'm going to put my legs against the wall and then just bring your awareness to your lower body. So legs are not too high and not too low. Gently lean your legs against the wall, or you can have them bent against the floor like this if you have a support or a chair. All right, everybody settled. So what you want to do is gently make your toes facing straight up, bend your knees a little bit, and this is all isometric. So without actually moving the legs, Slightly press your heels down to the floor, like you are bringing your heels closer to your hips. Again, this is only isometric. Just imagine like you have a block in between your knees, or you can even touch your knees and then press your knees against each other. Really feeling the glutes wrapping under the sit bone, engaging your inner thighs ever so slightly, and then feel the position of your tailbone. As you exhale, press the lower back in and down. You are actually lengthening the lower back. Keep the lower back flat on the floor, relax the shoulders and the neck, and just hold the contraction. Imagine one more time. This time your pelvic floor is perpendicular to the floor. So press your sit bones against each other. Push the pubic bone down and push the tailbone up. Lightly press the knees against each other and press the heels down on the wall or down on the chair without moving them. Relax it. Allow the legs stretch out for a second. We will do this one more time. This time I'm going to show it on the side like my legs are stretched. So it's the same thing. Flex your toes. Ever so slightly touch the knees to each other. And then what you want to do is press the knees against each other. Press the sit bones against each other. When you do this, your lower back starts to get flat already. Push the lower back down. And with your heels, press your heels up close to your hips. Just feeling the hamstrings fire, glutes engage. Press the adductors or the inner thighs against each other. Lightly push the toes against each other and completely relax. Very nice. Leg against the wall, keeping your legs up. And this time, allow your body to completely relax. Now take a moment to imagine the shape of the psoas. So we are going to do an opposite things at the same time. First, start to relax the psoas. Notice the shape of it from your inner thighs, the iliopsoas going out to the hip crusts, and start to visualize or imagine the normal psoas from your inner thighs, the top of the thigh bone, climbing up all the way to your lower back. Inhale all the way down to your pubic bone, and as you exhale, completely relax and release. Now allow this imagery to develop a little bit more, and with each and every breath, allow your psoas to relax a little bit more. It's in a short position because your legs are supported. It does not have any weight to carry. As you breathe, relax and release. Now the other part of this is every time you exhale, you are going to contract your pelvic floor. So this is how it's going to go. When you inhale, inhale all the way down to the front of your pelvis. Inhale, relax the psoas. Exhale ever so slightly, not the hips, but the pelvic floor. Press your sit bones closer to each other. So inhale to your navel, relaxing the psoas. And when you exhale, slightly, very gently lift up from your pelvic floor, pressing the sit bones closer. When you inhale, again, relax the psoas. We will do 5 more breaths. Exhale as your diaphragm is contracting back on itself, pushing the air out like you are doing it from the base of your spine. Press the sit bones against each other, tailbone forward and pubic bone backwards. Inhale again, relax the inner thighs, relax the lower back, relax the space in between them, which is the psoas. Exhale ever so slightly, very gently. Start to contract your pelvic floor, but not the hips or the inner thighs or the legs. Inhale again, relax in the psoas, relaxing inside of the hip crust. Exhale, gently contract the pelvic floor, pushing the pelvic floor up as you are pushing the air out of your body. 2 more, inhale. Exhale. Notice the image of the muscles contracting. 1 more, inhale. Allow the fibers of the psoas relax and lengthen. Exhale. Contract the pelvic floor only. Very nice. Take a moment to bend your knees and drop your knees to the right side. Lie on your side for maybe 30 seconds. Take a deep inhale, press your hand against the floor and come back up to a seated position. So how was it? It is very tricky to understand what's going on within the body to begin with, because it's very easy to use the arm muscle. You know the shape of it, you can see it, and like bicep is very easy. It only works one way. It doesn't go to right and left. It just gets shorter and gets longer. But like when it comes to the pelvic floor, you can push the pelvic floor down. You can push the pelvic floor up. You can push it forward, push it backwards. It has 6 directions that you can move it through, not only 2. So the more you start to become aware of it, the more it will be accessible for you to use it. How is that so far, everybody? Let's see what's going on. Jumping ahead for the next week, going back to the deeper part of the emotional world maybe, or the esoteric world. We are going to look at the witness consciousness and how to cultivate it. But in this case, it's going to be relating to stress and anxiety response and how to use this, how to reframe this, and how to create relaxation out of this. And our practice will be the breathing techniques and the diaphragm activation. So it's going to be an exciting part. And you do have a self-practice this time. Practice awareness of how you stand. So I'm going to hope that you are almost hyper aware of how you stand. You have to hear yourself. How am I standing? Where is my body weight? Am I leaning too far to the right, too far to the left? You have to become aware of what's going on. You might call it paranoia, but it's not paranoia. It's called self-awareness 101. And what are you going to consider is like, where is my body weight? Am I using anything overactive or underactive? And one thing I have to say, you will not notice how tight something is until you first feel the relaxation of it. So if you are always walking and then moving and lifting from your lower back, it will not feel natural for you to lift something using your hips until your hips actually kick in and then tell your lower back that, hey, you can relax, we got this. So notice what is really tight in the body and what initiates any motion. And ask yourself this question: do I feel comfortable in my body? Because after all, you should feel comfortable in your body. And if you want, you can become a part of our Facebook group, which is facebook.com/groups/you as the medicine. My goal for this group is to be able to share and then be seen and be open and be vulnerable as much as you are willing to be so. So the only people who is in this group is who have actively taken part in this, or the people that I have did interviews with. So whoever is in this group, they know how to hold a safe space. But the thing is, they also are shy to be seen. So whoever wants to take the lead, just take the lead and then share any reflection that you have on the practices that we have covered up until this point. Thank you very much, everybody. This is the end of today. And if you have any questions, I am more than happy to take it.